My nameplate's not up here. I don't know if she's up here.
I think maybe send her a vest then.
Oh,
That's
no.
what that means.
No.
Because there's definitely an extra one up there. These are additional ones. They're the same, but they've got some additional information I'd like to go over. Okay, thank you.
But I don't understand how if situation here. These are just.
You want this? Thank you. Hello.
If we are producing more ammonia, it seems like it stands to reason that it's in the water that we're
getting it somewhere.
Yeah. I had a heavy metal testing done. It was fun. Oh yeah, same. Oh really? Interesting. Was it? Okay, perfect. Okay. Gotcha.
Thanks for writing.
Waste of picture.
I'll thank you later.
Those portraits we had done were so What's that? The portraits we had done, it was like so bad. I told her like, please don't use my picture. Let's just use the old one. Yeah, everyone else looks good but me. I hated mine. So I was like, please don't use it. I'll get my own. Well, I felt rushed by that guy too. Was this the same person? He's like, oh no, you can take as many as you want, but here, I think I'm taking enough. Where's my mouse? Oh, did I put my mouse? No. I did that last time. No, I'm not that stupid.
Yeah, you can't have that. I don't know. I haven't been here in minutes.
I like two better because I want to.
I always tell you, you can always
Here it is. I knew I didn't forget it. All right. That was very magnificent. Excuse me.
Be nice to him. I'm always nice to Joe.
All right, it is 7:07. We need to get this meeting started. Welcome, everyone, and please stand with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was me. You all were so quick on getting up on that one. You just have to wait a second. Rory, will you call the roll? Here.
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 Thank you. Okay, we will hear from Chief Thomas for the Unified Police Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Tonight, just to keep things short, I know we've got a long agenda. If you look in your packets, I believe you got a handout that was regarding our mental health unit, our Metro Mental Health Unit. There were a couple of things. We went over this in our UPD command staff last week, and I thought it was quite interesting. As you'll recall, we recently had a deal where we had to place our vulnerable adults at the house just off up the street up 75th. And you'll remember Jody Sampson, she's a sergeant and she oversees the mental health unit. Well, what she's done is she's over the years transformed that into more of a metro mental health unit where additional agencies are jumping on board. And as you're well aware, often when we're dealing with those out in the field, there's significant mental health issues out there. And if you look at some of the statistics she pulled, and these are just some of the higher statistics for domestic calls, mental health calls, civil cases, welfare checks, suicides and attempted suicides. You'll see the numbers we have in Midvale are significant. I'm hoping you do have a copy of this and you're able to see those. Most importantly, what we've seen, and you've heard me talk about Detective Utley, my Swiss Army pocket knife of police officers. He, as you know, is attached to our Shelter Resource Officer Unit, and they typically deal with a lot of mentally unstable folks out in the field, those experiencing homelessness. In a recent meeting, it was really kind of clarified, and it made a lot of sense, is what you see in most of these folks that we're dealing with. And this isn't just mentally ill. This is just folks that police get calls on typically, and our high volume folks. It's either mental health, addiction, or sometimes a cognitive disorder where they're unable to really function. And where you point that arrow, each individual obviously has different aspects of those three main items. I'll call to your attention down in the very bottom right-hand corner of this, Sergeant Sampson looked at the cost, your average hourly cost, and this is a total cost with all the dispatch fees, the vehicle fees, the operating cost. You're looking at $72 an hour for our officers. This is a 2-officer call. Often they're on these calls with 2 officers for 90 minutes on each one of these mental health calls. What the mental health unit does is once they get a referral of a person who perhaps may suffer from mental illness, the patrol officers will refer that to the mental health unit, and in our specific grid or in Midvale, Officer Utley will basically go out and on a case by case file, they'll determine, would it be best if we go out monthly or maybe quarterly, and they keep, and just having it going out and with these mental health officers going out and just making contact with those that are high volume users, we don't get them in patrol anymore. So you can see the cost savings alone. She said, you're looking at about $220 per time they call. And sometimes these folks call 5-6 times a day. I can give very specific examples of folks I've dealt with over the years since I've been chief where they were calling 5-6 times a day, and we do respond 5-6 times a day. And you know, we try to get them to the hospital, or we may do what's called a pink sheet, where we take them to a facility and they do an assessment on them. They often release them and they're back in our grid within hours. If this mental health unit gets a hold of them and they do their case follow-up, oftentimes I don't hear from them. One specifically, and Councilman Sperry is very familiar with this gentleman that often complains about one of his neighbors. They started visiting him, and I didn't hear from him for an entire year. They closed the case out. It probably took 2 or 3 months. We started getting the calls again. I gave the mental health unit a heads up on it. They went and reinitiated the visits. I haven't heard from him since. So it's a great unit. It's very efficient. It's operating well. I do know that the sheriff will be asking for an extra body just specifically for all of UPD. It's not to go outside and assist necessarily, and there'll be more details in the UPD board meeting regarding that. But I would tell you that I definitely see the value, not only in our part-time participation in that in the city of Midvale, but across this valley, because these folks don't see borders. They travel up and down through tracks corridors, or even, you know, their personal vehicles, and it's a great unit. Do you have any questions, comments? Great. I am going to invite up our Officer of the Year, Detective Aaron Bartholomew, if you would come up, Aaron. I thought about, make sure he doesn't hit me, because he doesn't like the spotlight, but what I will tell you, I thought about reading off his citation, but I'm not going to do so. I'm just going to tell you that if any of you know Detective Aaron Bartholomew, he, when we call him Bart, he's the kind of guy that if you give him an assignment, you give it to him once, he gives you follow-up, he makes sure it's done 110%, it's done correctly, and never once has he complained, not even today when I texted him and told him that Cinco de Mayo is going to happen with under 30 days notice. So, and he is, his current assignment, he is our domestic violence detective. He also does COP. Secondary assignment, he's a SWAT operator with 2.5 years, or are we 3? Yeah. 3. We did steal him from another agency, which is, we're proud to do. And Aaron is one of those just go-to guys. He also is a very accomplished jiu-jitsu practitioner and trains us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, along with one of the other folks that work in our precinct. So it's an honor to know him. It's an honor to work with him. He is a heck of a guy, and I'm going to let him talk. And I know he doesn't want to, but I'm done talking. So come on over.
I'm not going to hit him, but he's going to pay for that on Thursday. I don't really have a lot to say other than, like you said, I did come from another city. I came from South Jordan several years ago. I've spent all of my time at UPD here in Midvale, and I really like Midvale. I have no desire to go to another part of the agency or to another city in the valley. I really like it here. So
We're happy
That's all
to
I have to
have you here. Thank you.
And just so you know the process of our Officer of the Year, every UPD officer is kind of entitled to give their opinion of who they thought performed the most. Their favorite, it can be, it's professionalism, it's, I'd say a little bit of how popular you are. You're a popular guy, apparently. But unanimously, our supervisors, our first-line supervisors voted him as our #1 guy. The second guy in that running was our Mark Utley, which is no surprise. But high caliber men, and I appreciate everything Bart does, and just wanted to bring him before you and show him off, because he's a heck of a guy. So thanks, Bart. This is when we're done here, I just recommend you leave, because the rest of the evening gets even more exciting.
Are we standing?
Are we doing a standing with?
Heck yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Gettle, I can't see you. Bergettle? Yeah, Bergettle. Bergettle? One, two, three. Well, at first it was Brown and then it was Gettle. It went back and forth until I could see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, that concludes my report. Do you have any questions for me or comments regarding anything in the community? Matt?
I just also wanted to say that I really appreciated when Bart was at, well, any event that I go to, because he's at all of them. And I sometimes have that wandering around to find someone to talk to so I look like I know what I'm doing, and he's usually one I gravitate to. You do a good service for this community. Like I said, we've increased the number of events that we're doing, and you're at all of those, and that means a lot to us, and I think we always feel, not only just from your presence, but from UPD's presence at a lot of our events, that really helps us feel like we're having things under control there. And so I only bring that up since you're at all of them, that really sometimes means you, and I appreciate everything that you do for us.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have the proclamation recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Month. And here we have Heidi Lund, who's the director of Life Start Village, if you want to step up. I don't know if you want to take 30 seconds, a minute, and talk about your work, and then I'll read this proclamation.
So I have been the Life Start Village director for the past 3 years, but I also started off as a resident there over 10 years ago. And I have been a resident of Midvale for 10 years, so I'm raising my kids here. And I just want to thank you for your guys' dedication to our mission and being as supportive as you guys are. I haven't met you in person yet, Marcus, but I look forward to it. Yeah.
Well, I will read
I know
this,
Dustin.
and then we will get this proclamation to you. This will be the second proclamation I've read as mayor, and my wife told me the first one I read too quickly, so I'll try to not read it as quick. Whereas the children of Midvale are the future of our state's success, and investing in their general welfare, safety, and livelihood are of utmost priority. And whereas all children deserve to grow up in a safe and nurturing environment to assure they reach their full potential as they grow and develop. And whereas the protection of children and strengthening of families is of concern and responsibility of all Midvale citizens, because the wellness of children affects our lives now and will continue to affect us in the future. And whereas child abuse is a serious problem, with 182 confirmed child victims in the city of Midvale last fiscal year, with each of those cases impacting an entire family and affecting the community as a whole. And whereas child abuse respects no racial, religious, socioeconomic, or geographic boundaries. And whereas all citizens of Midvale need to become more aware of child abuse and its prevention within their respective communities, and actively encourage and support parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing environment. And whereas preventing child abuse requires each member of the community to be attentive to the problems of families around them and commit to do everything they can to help. And now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Marcus Stevenson, and the City Council of Midvale City, on behalf of the citizens of Midvale, Utah, proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I call upon all our residents to renew their commitment to be educated on the impact of child abuse and join in working for its prevention within our communities. Adopted on this 5th day of April, 2022.
Thank you so much.
All right, this next portion of the agenda is for public comments. If there is anybody here who wishes to give public comment that is not on a public hearing item on the agenda, you can now step forward to the microphone. Rory, do we have any online comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, seeing none, I will move on to council reports. Councilmember Gettle.
Thank you, Mayor Stevenson. I'll just keep my comments brief tonight. I know we have a lot on the agenda. I just wanted to thank the city staff who have put together the redistricting information. I know that was something new for us this year to have the 2 open houses. I saw that we had a number of comments from the public about the maps, and so I think it was a success, even though the in-person attendance might not have been high. It does look like we have more engagement on this issue than other issues that we've had in the past. So I appreciate all the efforts the city staff put together to make that happen. That's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown?
Yeah, I'll be brief as well. We met with the Arts Council Board last night. Sadly, our admin turned in her 2-week notice a week ago, so this week's her last week. That's kind of a hard position to keep filled because although it is paid, it's not, you're not going to, get rich off of it. And there's a lot of time commitment, but it's pretty fulfilling, I think, when they do it. So if you guys know of anyone that in the area, closer is better because there is a lot of times coming out to the building out here. We found further away is really challenging. So if you guys know anyone looking for a part-time job that wants to be involved in the art community, we'll probably post something on our Facebook, and when that comes, Laura will probably want you to cross-post that as well. That's sort of the big takeaway. I think we have the bandwidth to sort of cover until we get someone. But otherwise, everything's sort of just moving forward. And that's all I have.
What's the pay for that sort of?
I actually do not know off the top of my head.
Let's wait to see it then. Not that I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I was like, are you interested?
You don't want me to do that, but no, I know people who might be interested in that.
Thank you. Councilmember Robinson?
I have nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Glover?
Only thing I have this evening is it's getting warmer weather. The mosquitoes are going to be coming out right away. So be prepared for that and get rid of any standing water around your homes. That's all this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Sperry?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up to the issue I raised before about Pure Court. The Canyon School District has invited a few of us if we want to participate in that next week. They have one on Wednesday, so they do want to keep the privacy of the youth there. And so, but if some of us want to go see what it's like, to see if we want to implement one here, we can have, they said anywhere 2 to 4 max. So, Laura, Mayor, if you want to come, Lisa, I don't know if you want to come from the legal standpoint, or if not, then if anybody else, just let me know and I can coordinate that. They've kind of put a buffer in their schedule. I'll look again, but if you tell me, I can forward you it. But I think it's about 5:15 that if we're there, that we can kind of do a Q&A with some of the youth judges. They'll have one case review prior to that, and then some afterwards. But let me know if you're interested, and I'll send you the information. That's it.
Thank you. For my report, I know in our last council meeting that we had just, being on the Unified Fire Authority Board, we had just officially offered the position to now Chief Burchett. So over the last couple of weeks, attended Chief Peterson's retirement after 42 years. Hope I'm not getting that number. I'm looking at Chief Larson. 42 years of fire service, and then attended Chief Burchett's swearing in. He's already sent over a 100-day plan, and again, has a plan to come and meet with the council and myself as quickly as possible. He's meeting with all the communities, but we will be meeting with him sometime soon. The other thing is continuing some legislative conversations. Last week met with Representative Elison and Representative Benyon, trying to schedule with our other legislators who cover this area, so that we're already continuing to work on next year's legislative session. And then the other big thing we did a week and a half ago at this point was, or last week, struggling here, was hosted the Conference of Mayors. We had many mayors from across the county here talking about the overflow shelter plan, as well as hosted Flourish Bakery came, and their great Midvale business that works on drug rehabilitation with their nonprofit. And they came and talked to us about the work that they do, and then we also had First Step in attendance at that as well. And that's my report. Matt?
I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay. All right. Okay. moving on to public hearings. Now, we've got a couple different items here. Item A, consideration of amendments to Title 17 of the Midvale City Municipal Code to address minimum parking requirements within multifamily and mixed-use developments. Just general public comment? Yeah. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Mayor, I move that we move into a public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? That motion passes. We will hear from Adam Olson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a proposal for amendments to parking requirements for mixed use, for residential uses in mixed use and multifamily developments. Really what it does is we went through the code and looked at where this would make sense, and so we identified all of the code sections that this would apply or be applicable to. Basically what it states, and I'll just read it on the screen, it says, the minimum required on-site parking must be provided for the use of the owner or tenant of a dwelling unit in a mixed-use project or a multifamily dwelling and their guests at no additional cost beyond the base sale or lease price of the dwelling unit. We understand that there has been some instances of these projects charging additional fees to use parking that needs to be provided when the project is approved and reviewed. And so we are hoping that by this addition, that slowly this will eliminate that, that happening. So as planning staff, when projects are coming forward, whether it's through a development agreement or when we're meeting with the developers now of multifamily projects, they are aware that this this will be required with their project. So the parking is there. The city requires minimum parking level or minimum parking requirements, and we are letting them know that they cannot charge over and above what that base lease, rental, or sale would be of that unit. The Planning Commission reviewed this. Discussion went back and forth, and ultimately the Planning Commission made a motion to recommend approval to you, the City Council, and that their condition, they asked that the Council consider the feasibility or the possibility of potentially having some retroactive clause with this. Now, that said, at the Planning Commission, there was one of the city attorneys was present and discussed with the Planning Commission the intricacies and difficulties of doing a retroactive enforcement. And as staff, we feel that there are ways to still get to where we want to go without using some kind of retroactive enforcement mechanism. So that's why the Planning Commission didn't necessarily say, we recommend approval, but we want the council to do this. They just basically said, we want the council to consider it as they had, and they were shown the pros and cons of that. And then ultimately, they just wanted you to know that it was discussed, and again, they went back and forth on that. So with that, this was the motion that the Planning Commission made. You can see that there are all sorts of numbers and letters and citations. After discussing with City Legal, this is the recommended motion before you tonight. Should you motion to approve this? And I can answer any questions.
I do have some questions about the retro effects of the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. How can we, it's just in these types of facilities, and if someone renews their lease, could we enforce it in that way, which is not like retro to the beginning of time when that facility was opened, but it would provide relief to those who are stuck in that type of arrangement, myself included, who pays $150 a month for a premium parking space?
That was discussed, and while I believe, and anyone can correct me if I'm out of line here, but I believe while that is a possibility, the difficulty comes down to tracking all of the leases and when they are up for renewal. That's just simply something that I don't know that we have the capability of tracking.
And I mean, can you just ask them to do a compliance report at the end of the year and prove it? And if not, we can fine them. Like, they're the ones that would have to, you'd put it on them, so we wouldn't track the lease, they would track it? I mean,
And again, that's
what I do
part
with
of
the
that
government right
retroactive
now.
measure. I know in some areas, and this was also discussed at Planning Commission, where there's a problem with people parking on adjacent streets. There may be the possibility of striping that either red curb or just simply stating no parking on the street, which then should help to address that. But again, the difficulty of that, I believe, is just tracking all of those individual leases. But as you said, Councilman Brown, maybe there's that other option. But again, I'll defer to those that know more on that than I would.
Thanks.
So state law does provide for a city to make an ordinance retroactive or essentially give a property owner time to do away with their non-conforming use, which in this case would be them charging for parking, right? But to do that, we have to present a formula on how that allows that property owner to recoup its investment. Meaning that was what was talked about at Planning Commission was having the property owner giving them enough time to be compliant by expiring of their leases and starting new leases. It would be difficult for us to go to them and say, we want to see that you're complying with this. We would have to go through certain code enforcement where we would possibly have residents come to us with those complaints. We can't just go in and say we want to see that you're compliant. That would be difficult, and we would have to do that in all of our multifamily properties. So we would have to create in the ordinance a retroactive provision and probably give them from probably 12 months to 2 years to be compliant. That is an option. In looking at the desired outcome versus that type of action, there are, like Adam said, there are probably other ways of going about getting the desired outcome more quickly and more efficiently. Not to mention that doing it or having this retroactive may not solve the problem. You may have just as many cars on any given street, regardless of what you require as far as paying for parking.
And we wouldn't necessarily, most of the places that I know have just free parking, which is first come, first serve. Then they have some sort of awning system, which is just, something over top of your car. And then they'll have like a garage. So, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say like you have to give your garages out for free now. But, if we could make some sort of, if we could just make some sort of differentiation between like an awning, which I think should also be free parking.
Carport.
Yeah.
Parking.
And not, if you want a garage, you should maybe pay more to have that storage as well.
The way the draft language was worded was that basically the minimum required on-site parking be either free or included in that base price. Typically, and it could be a covered unit, it could be an open unit, it could be a garage unit. That's probably up to them to decide.
Shift.
But it does state that base parking be free. So even in the, or not be free, but be provided for the use of that unit. I need to stop saying free.
Can I ask a quick clarifying?
Yeah.
When you say base parking, you mean for the entire
The minimum.
development? Just the,
Yeah, the minimum required. So even a studio or a one-bedroom is required one space. So even if you get down to that level, you're not getting into fractional spaces.
so there wouldn't be a difference of a bedroom apartment gets one space and a two-bedroom gets two spaces, you'd just be saying you have to be able to provide
The minimum
just the
level.
minimum across
Yeah,
the-
anything above and beyond that minimum, they are free to charge for that should they choose to. And some places have done that. This is very similar language to what Sandy City has in their ordinance, and so we modeled it after that.
Another question, do you have any idea, have you seen anything on how this would affect pricing for the units? I just imagine that a developer's still going to, they're just gonna move costs.
They may just move it into the rental or lease, but again, that's not an added cost on top, just to even use the parking. It's already built into it, and so the tenants know that up front, rather than moving in and then maybe finding out, oh, if I want a parking spot, it's an extra so much, so I'm just gonna park on a street.
And again, and maybe I said this, but if we do want to add that feature into the ordinance as far as the retroactivity, we would need to come up with language to that effect to put in the ordinance.
I think, I love this. I think it's a great thing that we should have done 10 years ago. But, you know, most of the largest development is behind us now. I mean, there's a lot to come, but I mean,
Well, I
compared to
think-
what's already here, it's like, you know, it's really a drop in the bucket, which is the third time I've said that in the last two meetings. So yeah, I love it moving forward, but again, it doesn't, you know, the problem exists right now, and it's not, if this doesn't make that problem any better, then I don't know, I feel like we could maybe come up with something.
And while it may not immediately
Better.
address it, I do think there are other measures that can address that, whether it be through, you know, restrictions of on-street parking in certain areas. Perhaps there's safety issues underlying that, which I believe those would be easy to enforce and enact. And so while this does help from today moving forward, yes, there are issues that are existing from the past, but I think there are ways to deal with those as well.
And would we be continuing to look into those ways to address that? Because again, I think that's much more the problem.
I would think so. And then in the interim, yes, those could be looked at, but this ordinance could move forward. And then we could officially have this on the books starting, you know, as soon as possible.
Okay. That's very helpful.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
We could pull that easy motion back up again,
Yes.
unless anyone really wants to read the long one.
I think it'd be fun. Well, this item is now open for public comment, if there is anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this item. Okay,
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? That motion passes and that public hearing is closed. We will wait for the motion to be pulled up.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 2022-009 to amend Title 17 as provided in Attachment A, with the finding as noted in the staff report.
Second?
Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. Brown.
Yes.
And Gettle.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Okay, item B, consider redistricting map options for the Midvale City Council districts. Do we have a motion to open?
Mayor, I motion we open a public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? That passes. Rory.
Okay. I don't get up here very often, so I'm going to go slow so you guys can get your fill, so I don't have to do this again for a while. So our redistricting happens once every 10 years. I'd like to say it's only once every 10 years I get to get up here, but it's not. So we do go by this census. Sorry. There we go. The district lines are redrawn, and they are to be in substantially equal population. That is the question as to what is substantially equal. There's not a definition in the code for that. So we go with as equal as we can get them, with staying within the criteria, which I'll go over. The city is divided into 5 council districts, and there's 1 member from each council district. Their districting is done, of course, with the census. This year it was a little bit late. Usually comes out in March. This year it came out in September due to the COVID pandemic. Utah code says that the city council must make their adjustments to the districts within 6 months after the legislature completes the redistricting process. So that puts us at about May 16th, because they approved the state districts November 16th of 2021. 2 open houses were held. The first one was here at City Hall on March 15th. We had a couple people that attended. Not very many, but a few. And here's my, okay. So we do have, I sent out to you the survey that was done and the comments that were made from the survey. And so I wanted to go over those briefly. So we had an open house on the 15th, an open house on the 23rd. We also had a survey, redistricting survey online on Engage Midvale. And we have had just a few comments on that. There's a mixture of people. We asked if they, of course, describe their relationship with Midvale. Didn't much answer that. Which district they live in. So the first one, District 4, comment about option 1, excuse me. Option 1 was District 4 can support higher density. What they don't like about option 1 is District 4 can support higher density. And what do you like about map number 2? I prefer the other option. And what don't you like about it? I prefer the other option. So they obviously liked option 2. The next one was from District 5. And what they liked about District 1 was that they stay in District 5. They must really like Dustin. And what they don't like about option 1 is District 2 and 5 have a weird border, could be looped off at 7200 South. Option 2, what they like about it, that I stay in 5 and downtown becomes 2 districts. What don't you like about just option 2 is nothing. The next one is District 4. I like the freeway being as a natural buffer on map 1. What they don't like is I don't like having districts having even numbers of residents. That's an interesting one. Option 2, the district boundaries seem to keep similar neighborhoods together. What they don't like about it, I don't like the districts having such big differences in residents. District 3 has almost 900 fewer people than districts 1, 2, and 5. And their additional comments were I would like to see the districts more balanced in their population. I understand that some of the districts are still adding populations, but they could be designed to account for growth. The next one was from District 5. What they like about District 1 is they don't like it. What they don't like about District 1, I don't like the way District 5 is split, bordering with District 2. It doesn't make sense. Map 2, or option 2, what they like is District 5 makes sense drawn this way, and what they don't like is nothing. The next one was District 4. What they like about option 1, greater area of coverage for District 2, 3, and 4 to allow more understanding of residents in different zoning districts. What they don't like is District 1 doesn't really change. It still only covers the east side. Yes, that's difficult. District 2 should cover more of the east and less of the west, and District 1 should take more of District 3. What they like about option 2, District 5 covers most of the new development and old Midvale diverse. What they don't like is not enough change for District 1, less change for District 4. It would be nice for all of the districts to cover more districting zones. District 4 is mostly over single-family homes. 5 is mostly apartments, etc. It often feels like city councilors don't agree on some issues because it doesn't affect their constituents, so they can vote yea or nay on an issue that won't affect them. The next one is from District 1. What they like about option 1 is it helps the east versus west Midvale perception. They don't like the variation is a bit larger. Option 2 is the variation seems more even. And what they don't like is the brief jot into District 4 does not, probably not, unite east-west enough. The next one is District 1. Just option 1 was a good start. What they don't like is is it possible to shift District 3 down a bit to create a straight line on the south and increase the count while increasing the count for District 4. Option 2 is not, what they do like is not much. What they don't like is having a district divided by a freeway. I-15 seems odd and may not make sense in terms of demographics. Comments, is there a way to create more equal options in terms of population? The next one is District 1. Option 1 gives greater voice to west side of Midvale and uses natural city lines better to define districts. They don't like his map is fine. Option 2, not as much change from current maps, and they don't like District 4 don't like how District 4 is drawn. Feels very unnatural. The next one is District 2. The area is more together. Paul is slightly removed from his leg of District 2, because it's so far away from him. What they don't like about option 1 is District 2 has places on both sides of I-15. I think they have very different needs. Option 2 is District 5 is mostly the same type of area. District 3 is 900 residents smaller. Their comments, thank you for keeping up with the need we noticed several years ago. And the last one, they're in District 4. What they like about option 1 is fairly equal representation. What they don't like is it combines two different of areas. Option 2, similar areas represented, and option 2, what they don't like is they do like it. So those were all the comments that we received. I know that was a little laborious, and I apologize, but that helps a little bit with knowing kind of what people are saying. The next one with the census, as you've noticed, there is Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute published the census. The average growth in Utah was 18.1%. Midvale was a bit higher than that at 28.8% growth, whereas somewhere like Murray, our bordering city, grew 8.3%. So big difference in the different areas. You can see where the growth is, and you can see there where the population has increased from 2010 from 27,964 to 36,028, 28.8%. Okay. In our code, it does say that we have a 6-member council, 5 members of council, or 5 city council members voted from a district and mayors at large, and that we do need to have a map that is approved after the census and be substantially equal populations, and then keep that map on file, which we have in my office. Factors to consider, which a lot of people may not know a lot of this, is that the redistricting is to create a substantially equal distribution of population within each council district. When you're drawing the lines, the official population numbers are from the 2020 census, and they must be used. The districts must be contiguous and reasonably compact. Districts must follow natural boundaries, such as streets. Apparently, people don't like I-15. I think that there's a little something out there about that. Districts must be drawn to create 5 districts, and the current council members, this is a big one, must stay in their designated district. If not, we then have a vacancy and we have to fill the position and you're just out of office. So that's not a good thing. So we want to make sure that you stay within your district. A lot of these people don't understand that maybe where the houses are at, and that could affect some of their comments. So the current map is...
Sorry,
yes.
we just, I might have missed how you said it. Those last factors are factors that we've talked about before and are good practices, but they are not code requirements.
Exactly, yes. They're not code requirements, but they are logical, and we want to make sure that none of you are misplaced from your districts, and they just make sense. So The only requirement is that we actually have a redistricting of substantially equal distribution of population within the council districts. This is the current district map with the voting precincts. Now, with the voting precincts, the county goes through and they redistrict their voting. I call them precincts because it gets confusing with the council districts. But the voting precincts, we don't want to change the voting precincts because you cannot split, the county cannot split the election and have half of a precinct voting for one person and half of a precinct voting for another person and being able to calculate that without any kind of errors. So we do not want to go outside of the voting precincts that are set solely by the county. The MID numbers on here, those are the voting precincts. The other numbers are population. So we're looking at the precincts. We're trying to get them into the districts, the council districts, in a substantially equal population. Not an easy task. A little bit easier with GIS, I have to admit. GIS has been fantastic, but we do have that, that challenge of making it all work. District 1 is not an easy one where Quinn lives and trying to, you just cannot represent the west side, Quinn, I'm sorry, but it's just not really physically possible with the voting districts the way they are, unless you wanted to do something really bizarre.
I just need to be difficult for you.
You are.
Classic Quinn.
It's not just for you, Rory. It's not just for you.
It's not just, okay. So as you can see, option 1, I have given you a more detailed map that we put together, and this includes the precincts. So you can see where the precincts are and how we'd have to divide those. So this does not say the populations here are in white. And so I've given you one that you can look at that's a little easier for you to read. There are still, we still have a little bit of time to where we can look at these and see if you want to change the maps. This is option 1. And then we also have option 2. What the council had looked at 4 options, thought that these were maybe the best of the 4 options, but there's still a little bit of room to where we could make additional changes if you would like. So this is option 2. As you can, does this have a pointer? Like a red dot? No? I better stop pushing things. Down in the right-hand corner, it has the option 2, so you'll know which one you're looking at. But again, you can see the only thing that Providence didn't do on this one is put the houses in there. So if you look at, oh, they're not in that one either, are they? So this one here, the one that's our current map, the houses are where you all live in your districts, and they have the district number next, or the council district number next to them. So we'd want to make sure that you stay within your boundary, your district boundary. Matt, have I missed anything? Is there any questions for me on any of this? You're welcome to take a look at this. We do have to have it to the county by mid-May. I would suggest the last day that we could adopt a map would be the first meeting in May. So if you want to bring this back, if you'd like me to reschedule it for more discussion, I can do that for the next meeting on the 19th. Or we can go ahead and schedule it for adoption, whichever you prefer. Or you can just let me know.
Questions or comments from the council?
Heidi says she wants to move into District 1.
Quinn's just being difficult.
I do have some concerns, just, you know,
Yes.
Nothing that, anyone has done with these numbers, but I do feel that one of the comments was that Midvale 1 stay in District 5, which I tend to agree with that. Midvale 001. So that's
Oh, I thought you said
all
District
the
1,
way.
sorry.
Yeah. so
Okay.
It's confusing, the terminology can be
It
confusing.
is, there are a lot of numbers.
Just because Midvale 001, 008, 009, and 017 have always been in the same district. And Midvale 18 used to be in the 4th district. So option number 2 restores that continuity that once existed in District 4 and keeps District 5 as together as possible. I would note that 1, 8, 9, and 17 are all newer areas of Midvale, so I think that it makes sense to keep those together. Another thing in my district is that it's so heavily populated with apartment complexes, which generally creates a less stable voting base because there are folks moving in and out quite frequently, as I've noticed both times that I ran for office, because sometimes you get a list of voters and there's like 10 people listed at the same apartment, and that's because at some point within the last 2 years or so, that many people have been registered to vote at that address. So I think by removing Midvale 001 from District 5, that takes away from my district one of the most stable single-family home neighborhoods that I have, other than the avenues here, which I would keep in both iterations of the map. So I do have that concern about losing 001. Again, it's one of my most stable areas where I can go there and know that there are people from 4 years ago who still live there. So I would be disappointed as well to lose that.
And I agree with a lot of the comments made about the east-west thing, right? So option 1 gives 3 council members an option between east and west of State Street, where option 2 only gives 1 option, you know? I think, because a lot of times we'll hear that come up, and it's easy now when most of us are on one side or the other to say, well, you know, my side gets this or my side doesn't, but we're, you know, if 3/5 of the 3/5 of us up here represent both sides, you know.
I agree with Councilmember Brown on that. Option 2 puts 2 of us strictly running north to south versus east to west, so we don't have anything past State Street. So that's one thing I actually do like about option 1, is that more of us have the east-west coverage.
Is there any, I know we don't have a ton of time, there's some new creative idea that we could make?
You know, I could work on this and attempt to come up with something.
To get Mid 1 into District 5, but keep the 3 east to west?
Right. I can work with Probin on that. As you can see, the 010 is a big voting precinct. What'd you say?
An island, he'll take 1
Okay.
somehow, that'll work.
I'm going to be on an island. So, yeah, I can take this back and work with him on that. Let me take a look and see what we can do. Trying to keep,
The 01, that's where Topgolf is, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that. We'll do a block party there.
Everybody wants Topgolf. Yeah. There you go. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, because then I think
Bring
that
me a
would.
few more options.
Yeah, because out of the suggestions, or whatever, from the you know, public comments, it
Right.
seems if 1 can stay in 5, but we could still keep the east to west to 3, we'd cover up a lot of what the sort of population said. I also agree that I-15 generally is sort of a weird, it's probably our biggest natural barrier, right, between everything in our city, right? We don't have like a river or any other bigger road. But there's no way Dustin can keep everything west of the freeway either, right? Because that would be, I mean, that's kind of why we're here, you know, because his area wants to keep building.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there are certain parts of like 6th Avenue where I have one side of the street and Councilmember Glover has the other side of the street,
yeah.
so.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
It is a little
That's
crazy.
the one reason I like the number 2, is just because it puts it, we're not, it's so hard right now to even know which district you're in.
It really is, and that's why we try to keep it
I mean, where I
a little more
live,
simple.
I've got like 20 homes and 1,500 apartments in that District 2 for the voting district for the county. So it changes consistently every single thing. For me, I can live with either one. Personally, though, I think 2 is the best situation. I just think just the way it's divided for the freeway and everything else. I'm not sure we need,
A lot more options.
is the other options. That's like, that will work. It has worked, and I think it'll work actually better than it's working right now.
I think so, too.
And so for Dustin and me, I think 2 would be by far the best for us, but.
And then if there are, if Paul and I are okay with number 2, I think, if Bryant and Heidi and Quinn, well, Quinn has no difference in either of them.
It sounds like it's a 2-2, and the second vote is the one who doesn't change under either option.
But, I mean, if Bryant and Heidi have, I'm sorry, Councilmember Brown and Robinson, if you two have, like, one that you want to switch with each other or, work out something between you two, it could be a matter of switching 1 or 2 precincts rather than,
It could be, and
whole
just looking
thing.
at this, I would say with
Like-
District
yeah, sorry.
3, maybe taking on mid 004, to add a little bit of population to District 3. It'll take,
004.
right at the very top, right there, that says MID 004.
Oh, and then I push east a little bit.
Right, and then you would push east a little bit, maybe as
24.
24
So that's pretty much what I have now, minus 18.
minus the 18.
I mean, that's what my current district is.
Right.
And another thing we didn't consider, and I talked to City Manager Dahl, is that I know it's not part of what we should consider, but Bryant's district has the highest voter participation, despite, right now having far fewer residents than the rest of us. So,
Yeah.
from an electoral perspective,
I've gotten 100% of the votes for both elections, so.
but even still, when
I don't know why that.
when the population in District 5 was 10,000, and like an active one candidate versus another candidate race, there were less votes in District 5 than District 4 in the last
Right.
2 elections, so.
The only thing with doing some of these is you're going to get away from some of the natural
Yeah,
dividing lines. It's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit more cut up.
Yeah, good solid lines
So-
make it so much easier.
It does. It definitely does.
Especially when you got constituents calling you and saying, are you in my district?
Which we get a lot
Can you
of,
say
yeah,
that?
we get a lot
What
of, you get a lot of
side
calls, we get a lot of calls
It's
as
like-
well.
what side of the freeway are you?
Yeah. Chris
Right
Butte
now,
has
there
a,
are areas where I say, well, if you're north of this,
Right.
but west of that, the tracks, it's hard to do.
it is. It is. So,
And, I mean, we're not gonna be here forever, at least I'm not, I probably won't. But bottom line is like, people come and go all the time, so,
In 10 years, mid-1 is gonna have to leave District 5, once, if Gardner
it
builds
will,
out.
it will, with the population increases in 17.
Yeah, it will
and-
definitely have to.
And maybe 09 or 08, when those populations increase. Those are pretty built out though, aren't they, Dustin? 08 and 09.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, no,
it's really
nine.
17 is where the growth is going to be.
Yeah.
So that
17.
could eventually, yes, move out of District 5.
But that's why keeping 18 with him makes sense, because if you have, he'll have 3 precincts, according to this map, but.
The only thing with, if he kept 18, that puts him another 2,000 population.
Yeah.
And that's going to
Oh,
put
that's
him
what
way
this other
high.
number is. the
Yes,
popu- I'm like
it's the
trying to figure out why there's
population.
these 2 numbers this whole time.
So yes, you're looking at the precinct, and that the other number is the population of the voting precinct. So if you add that 2098 to 7567, it's going to put him way above everybody else.
18 has a lot of people in it.
It does. It's a big, yeah, it's a dense area.
And the other thing I'll note about the maps is that, right now I have Midvale 18 in my district, so I'm losing 2,100 voters.
You
And,
are,
in the other districts, I don't think anyone else is losing any. In fact, I think the other 4 council members gain population. So,
That's why we're here, it's because of your.
because
yeah.
everything's
Well,
changed, yes.
I'm just saying it's just a different, I have to approach it a different way than you guys look at it like, which map do I like the best? I look at it, which one do I like the least? Because, obviously I don't want to lose any of the people who supported
Right.
me or didn't support me, but.
So the 2 that I'm really looking at closely are District 4 and 3 because they are a lower population. The only bad thing is mid-010 is a big voting precinct. And so that makes it difficult, because it's right in the middle, of course. I wish they would have split that one, but they obviously didn't, so.
Because 19 is so tiny. Like, why didn't some of 19 go to 10, right?
Right, and they have,
Like right here. it would've
yeah.
made sense.
They're also looking at contiguous lines. You know, they're trying to make the lines more
Put all that together.
defined.
Which again, I think is really good.
Which is good.
Just because it makes it so you know where you're at.
Right.
What districts you're in, whether it be city or county.
Exactly.
I like to, so.
Something to just keep in mind.
Yes.
If, District 3 picked up Midvale 4 with the 1,500, you're taking District 2 down to 6,000 voters, which is lower than anything we have at this point.
Oh, that's true. Well,
Because that's not picking up a different precinct.
do you see why this is so fun?
Wait, say that again? If you're looking at option 2.
So, well, okay, so what it was talked about was Councilmember Brown taking on Midvale 24, and then Councilmember Robinson taking on Midvale 4.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not giving anything to District 2 on this, to Councilmember Glover.
No.
Dropping
Yeah.
7,500
Right.
to 6,000.
What I would suggest is, building from option 2 is to figure out between the blue and the purple,
Right.
like what makes sense to give or take. If it's one with a higher population, to go to Councilmember Brown to even that out, something like that. I mean, of the options, I fully intend to support option number 2 as is. So, if you guys have something else that you come up with.
I'm fine with 1, as is.
Okay, I'm happy to go back to the drawing board.
What's the range? I know you were saying it's not set, right, for the guidance.
Substantially equal population.
There's
No definition. So,
Sounds like government, good guidance, just completely vague.
Lisa's looked. There's no definition, so.
Do you have anything else you want to say on that?
Well, in cases not related to election, so when they're dealing with discrimination cases and housing issues, things like that, the substantially equal is kind of 10% is the threshold, the difference. But that's not in dealing with redistricting unless you're claiming, maybe a racial disparity or something, and then those would be more applicable, but.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And for Councilmember Brown and Robinson, the differences between options 1 and 2 are, I guess, significant for the two of you, but there might be like one precinct between the two of you that you might want to keep or switch. I don't know what about number 2 you guys don't like.
I don't like that I have anything on the west of state.
So you would like to
I
have more on
completely
the.
run north to south on that one. And so then you've got Quinn and I back to back that are just completely north to south with nothing past State Street. Only having Bryant and Paul have,
No, I wouldn't either.
oh yeah.
It would just be Paul.
Yeah, let me see if I can divide that up to where you have more, similar to 1, but just a little different configuration.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to run like linear like that, I'd rather it be east and west
Sure.
because we have heard numerous times that we don't have a lot of,
Representation?
yeah, on the west side. So I
Sure.
think that would be a good thing to look at.
Sure.
I mean, if you needed
Straight
to,
line, straight down. That's the nice part.
because right now my district is 7th East and East, right?
Right.
And you're adding in the mid 05.
Right.
It's 852. If you took that away from District 1, I mean, that drops me low, but in the Fort Union, I mean,
Yeah,
we
this
have
is all
one of the
mine
things on
now.
the agenda
Well, not
tonight,
really,
others,
it's
I mean,
like half
they're seeing growth
This is
there.
really steep.
Oh,
But
some growth.
I mean, I don't know if that's something we take into consideration. I know that Dustin's got that in his too, so
Yeah.
there will be growth to even that out, but.
And Colleen.
Would
Okay.
any of you be interested in moving?
Heidi already said she'd move
I
it.
think
I'm
Cordelia
thinking I'm gonna
volunteered.
move.
Signs up.
I think I'm gonna move behind Topgolf.
Dustin's the quickest to go, so you could go, yeah, go ahead, move back over there, you'd be fine.
Yeah, Dustin's already, haven't you already moved a couple of times?
Yeah, come on,
times, yeah.
Dustin.
In the same building.
Okay. Any other questions for me? I'll see what I can do. Come back. Yes, we're still in a public hearing, so you'll need to open it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rory. All right, this item is now open in public hearing, and if there's anybody here who wishes to give public comment on this item, you may step up to the microphone now and state your name. Okay, seeing none,
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? Okay, that passes, and we've closed the public hearing.
Yeah.
We don't have an action for that item tonight, so we will move on to the consent agenda, which is both consider minutes of March 15th and 23rd, 2022, and set the date and time, April 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. for a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2022 budget for the general fund and other funds as necessary. Mariah, were you planning to speak to that?
Sorry, to what?
To the,
No, she wasn't.
to the budget and general fund amendments to set,
I know, I don't
set
need
the
to.
public hearing.
Mayor,
Okay.
that's later on the agenda,
I'm
actually. It's in
going to
discussions, under discussion.
Oh, okay,
I'm
Yes.
gonna discuss the amendment later on.
thank you. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes. Councilmember Glover,
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
and Sperry.
Thank you. In the future, I'm just gonna drop people's names just to see if they were paying attention.
I like the way this is headed.
Yeah.
That was my fault. I distracted her.
Okay, moving on to our action items. Our first agenda item, consider resolution number 2022-R-11, confirming the mayor's appointment of Karen Kester as the city treasurer for Midvale City. Karen, would you like to step up to the microphone? While she's walking up, I'll just say, as we all know, we've had this position open for a number of months now, but was really excited to meet Karen and interview her. She's got some great accounting experience, some great private and public accounting experience, certified in public funds investment manager, and I think she just fit in great here with the team. Just wanted to give the council another opportunity to ask Karen any questions.
Okay.
Make any comments.
Did you like option 1 or option 2?
Quinn needs your guidance.
No comment on that.
Smart girl.
All right, well, with no further discussion, is there a motion on resolution 2022-R-11?
Mayor, I will just say real quickly, I did reach out to folks at American Fork. I haven't heard back from anyone just yet, but when I do, I'll be sure to embarrass her with comments at our next council meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Gale.
And with that, Mayor, I motion that we approve resolution number 2022-R11, confirming the mayor's appointment of Karen Kester as the city treasurer for Midvale City.
Second.
Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Robinson. Yes. Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
And Glover.
Aye.
Can we get a picture?
Sure.
Welcome to the team.
Get your family up here too?
Sure.
Come on, family. Time to embarrass. We do that a lot. Yes, fair warning.
You said you had one little with you, but he looks taller than all of you. I just want to point that out that. Okay, fair. I was expecting
Okay. Now Heidi, you can't hide.
Are we?
Okay.
Are we out of it?
Yeah, no, you're not, Quinn. There you go.
When we do this, ruined it. Her first official photo.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, item B, consider resolution number 2022-R-12 approving the development agreement for the project located at 1122 East Fort Union Boulevard to allow for a proposed 5-story apartment building with structured parking and street-level retail. Elizabeth.
Okay, yes, so this is for the development agreement for the Fort Union Apartments at 1122 East Fort Union Boulevard. You should have seen this at the last council meeting. It was just here for the rezone and everything that we discussed. So just to remind you, this is the conceptual site plan with some ground level retail and then apartments above. This just highlighted some of the items that are included in the development agreement. So that they construct the project in accordance with the final site plan and any other approvals. It details some of those parking requirements that haven't yet been met, stipulates that parking is provided for the use of the residents, like Adam was mentioning earlier with that other text amendment, and then also vests the property. And the recommended motion has remained the same. It should just be a formality, so.
So this would, even though they've started an application, what we've just passed for parking would apply?
Yes, because Elizabeth and Adam included that in the development agreement, included that requirement.
Okay,
So,
Perfect.
so it's not retroactive technically then?
no, it's not retroactive, and it wouldn't have applied to them, but for them including that in the development agreement.
Okay.
Thank you for including that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution 2022-R-12, authorizing the mayor to sign the development agreement for the project located at 1122 East Fort Union Boulevard.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robertson.
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. Okay, item C, consider resolution number 2022-R-13, approving the purchase of water meters and water department inventory. Clap.
I think your titles always have to sound the most exciting.
Oh. And I just want to point out for the record, I was the one distracting Mariah. It's budget season. We're talking budget all the time.
So exciting.
I know, it is. As we discussed last time at the discussion, we are looking to purchase both water meters and the water department inventory early. One development that's occurred since I brought this to discussion at the last council meeting is one of the quotes we're not moving forward with. That was included in your packet. It was literally yesterday that it looked like the quote wasn't going to work out. So I did update the amounts for the resolution if the council chooses to approve those. It reduces it. It goes from $261,366.79 to $226,561.10. If there's any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
That was pretty quick. If there's no questions or comments, I'll accept a motion on the resolution.
Mayor, I move we adopt resolution 2022-R-13, authorizing the purchase of water meters and water department inventory in the amount of $261,366.79.
That's actually the incorrect amount.
I was wondering. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's what you just said.
It's 226,000.
Okay, I'm just going to read that one.
Okay.
Redo. I move we adopt resolution 2022-R-13 approving the purchase of water meters in the amount of $116,958.10 and water department inventory in the amount of $109,603.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robertson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes. Kyle, you know not to go anywhere? Okay. All right, item D, consider resolution number 2022-R-14, authorizing specific city employees to make changes to the city's public treasurer's investment fund accounts.
Okay, thank you. So this one's fairly simple. We have done this before in the past. We have an investment account with the public treasurer, and one of their requirements is we have to specify by resolution individuals within the city that can make changes to that account. So we can have an unlimited number of people accessing it, but the people that can actually make changes to the account are limited. So my recommendation, now that thank you for appointing the treasurer, I appreciate it. Now that we have a full-time treasurer instead of an interim, my recommendation would be to have her and also our administrative services director be the primary ones that can make changes to the account.
So you said multiple people can have access, but only two can make changes?
We can have as many as we want make changes, but anyone that's accessing the account doesn't necessarily have to be approved by the council.
So is it just those two, or can you also make changes?
So I can't make changes anymore. I felt with our administrative service director is the finance director, and then the city treasurer, there's backup there. I have access to the account, and also our city senior accountant does also. So there's multiple people that can access it.
Does it take more than one person to do that, or?
No, it's one person can make changes. So it's not a dual control type thing.
Why is that? I mean, it seems to me like you should have at least two people do that kind of thing.
My guess with seeing the portal we're using to access the account, it probably is a technology issue. It's the same portal they've been using probably for at least 15 years, would be my guess.
What's our procedure, though, to do that? Is our procedure just to let that person change anytime they want, or?
No, so we have a few controls into place. So number one is we have somebody independent. Our senior accountant does the bank reconciliation. He would see as part of his processes reconciling the accounts if there were any changes. Also, our administrative services director would be in close contact with our city treasurer anytime she wanted to make changes. And depending on the change, it might even have to come back to you as the council for approval anyway, depending on what that change is. But the most normal change that would happen is adding employees to access the account. For example, if we had a change in our senior accountant, this person would be able to add them as a user to the system. They can take users off. In terms of investment decisions, those are all made at the state level. One of the fraud risks would be if they were to do somebody that had authority to do a withdrawal, for example. Our senior accountant would pick that up. We also, as a group in finance, and also myself in administration, I'm constantly in that state investment account monitoring balances and making sure everything's okay. So if anything unauthorized was done, it would get caught pretty quickly.
That's my concern.
Yeah, sure.
It's a fraud issue.
Yes.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on that, I'll ask for a motion. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 2022 R14, authorizing Karen Kester, City Treasurer, and Mariah Hill, Administrative Services Director, to make changes to the city's Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, PTIF account.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Or you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Gettle.
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. And Brown.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to our discussion items. Item A is discuss task order number 141.47.100 with Hanson, Allen, and Luce for the design and construction management services for 2022 pipeline replacement. Curtis.
Happy to be here. This is first time I'm missing a Zoom meeting. So as you said, this is the task order with you have Hanson on Luce for the design and construction management services for our 2022 water line replacement projects. As we continue our efforts to replace aging and undersized water lines, we would like to begin the design work on our next two lines on our list off of our master plan. These projects are to replace the mains, the 6-inch and the 8-inch main on Center Street between Tracks and State Street, as well as the replacement of the water main on High Tech Drive from roughly 7200 south to our north border with Murray City. We anticipate these projects will cost roughly $800,000. We're looking to use the general CIP line item from our water funds for the fiscal year 2022 and 2023. The annual budget for this, for each year, is $500,000. This will give us a total of $1 million. With the anticipated construction cost of $800,000, we have $200,000 for design, construction engineering, and contingency on these projects. We've discussed these projects with Hanson Onalus and have received the task order from them for the design and construction engineering services for this project. And the total fee for that task order is $140,000 and $280. The design portion of that is $55,870, and the construction services is $84,410. A resolution will be prepared and presented to you for your next meeting for your action. Do you have a, click. So this is a map of the High Tech project area, and it starts just north of 7200 south right as the road makes a bend, and then goes and turns and then goes and hits our border with Murray on the north end there. And then this is the Center Street project, and we have a 6-inch main on the south side of Center Street and an 8-inch main on the north side of Center Street. And this would be eliminating those two mains and making it one bigger main. So we don't have to worry about two mains there. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Is the high check, is that just the increased capacity, or is the piping going
That
bad?
one's actually failing, the piping. We've had 10, 12 leaks there in the past 5 or 6 years. So, and Center Street, the piping, it's poor there as well, and we've had leaks, but we've also had a major problem shutting the mains off there. So if we can get new piping in the ground where it shuts down completely, then that'll help with water loss and road damage.
Do we replace these by trenching or?
Yeah. Yep.
When was the last time we surfaced those roads?
Last week.
I'm not sure on Center Street.
Last week? No, we're gonna do next week, and then we're gonna work on that.
Typically, that's what Keith gets upset about is they'll resurface the road and then we have water main break and we dig it back up, so.
Do you remember, Glenn?
I'm not sure on Center Street. High Tech, I don't think has been resurfaced
It's been,
anytime.
High Tech has been a really long time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Center.
Where high tech is.
We try to work with engineering on his road projects coming up and then decide what we can put in first before they do theirs.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Okay, seeing none. Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you.
All right, item B, discuss proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2022 budget for the general fund and other funds as necessary. Mariah, are you ready?
I'm ready for this, yeah.
I was
Did Kyle
expecting.
really distract you earlier?
No, really, he was telling me about police numbers, budget stuff. We really were.
Got their story straight.
I just have a spreadsheet because someday you guys will get me up here talking for like 20 minutes, but today is not that day. This is really simple. We're not even making any increases or decreases in the general fund. We're just, with the move of GIS to IT, we're just moving their funds because it's interdepartmental. We need to get that approved by you guys. So that's moving salaries and benefits of the GIS department that is in the general fund from engineering to IT. And then just for what you approved just barely with Kyle for the water meters and inventory, just using use of water fund balance this year and will decrease the expenditures next year. We are only using $100,000 instead of the 109 for the water inventory from next year's budget, but the full 116 for the meters. So that's all that this budget amendment does. Any questions?
So the water meters come out of the water fund?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They're paid for into the water fund by developers and builders. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mariah? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, item C, fire restriction discussion.
Every year, UFA asks us to provide a fireworks restriction map based on what we see as being the conditions on the ground, coupled with what is allowed under state code. As you're aware from our discussions from last year, state code is pro-firework. What we did last year was a little bit different, and so that's why I wanted to have this conversation, in that we started the year off with this map. The red area there is the area that we have had for many years, have had fireworks restrictions. That's largely along the Jordan River area and then into the Jordan Bluffs area. The last year when we had the particularly bad drought, we had the conversation in June and into July about expanding that area. We had UFA provide us with specific feedback that allowed us to, we feel under state code, expand it throughout the whole city. But the ordinance that you approved had a expiration date of October 15th of 2021. And so with that, it reverted back to this map. So UFA is, again, like they do annually, as I started out, has asked us to provide a map of what our current fireworks restrictions areas are. And I wanted to talk to you about that to, one, again, remind you that we no longer have a full city ban, and two, to see if you have any thoughts on this current area where the fireworks restrictions are currently. If you don't have any, we'll come back to have you formally approve it so we can pass that on to the UFA to include in their countywide map. But if you have any thoughts on areas that we should look at or consider or talk to UFA about, perhaps expanding it, we can do that as well. Did I miss anything, Lisa? Okay.
No matter what we approve tonight, if we have another crazy drought situation, we can revisit. I don't know if emergency is the right word, but change the map, and UFA would be fine with that. Right?
That's right.
I mean, I'm fine with leaving it as it is and then approaching it that way, unless anyone else has any.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well.
That's good.
Okay, that's it.
Was that easier than you thought it was going to be?
No, it was just, it's a discussion item, it was informative, that's where we're at.
All right, moving on to the last discussion item, 2022 legislative wrap-up.
I'll also go quickly through this one since there are several parts of this that you have heard before. Just quickly, there's a lot of people that helped us out throughout the legislative session. Of course, I want to thank our legislators, Representative Ivory, Elison, Stoddard, and Benyon, as well as Senator Reby. In addition to that, of course, every year we receive a tremendous amount of help from Dave and Ashley Spatafor, as well as from the Utah League of Cities and Towns. This year on the legislation that particularly benefited us to the tune of several $100,000 a year, Cameron and Molly from the league were indispensable and appreciate the work that they've done. In addition to that, I also wanted to give a thank you to the other shelter hosting communities, particularly Salt Lake City and South Salt Lake City. Mayor Wood and Mayor Mendenhall worked closely with Mayor Stevenson in order to improve the bill that affects homeless mitigation funding in our communities, and so I appreciate the work that they've done. And then, of course, Wayne Niederhauser with the Utah Office of Homeless Services worked closely with us this year as well, and we'll have a long and in-depth relationship with him going forward as we continue to make sure that our community is treated fairly and that those experiencing homelessness that are part of our community are also treated fairly as well. If I were to have some themes from this year, I'm sure anyone you had asked would have a different sort of category or different interpretation of it. We've talked about this a little bit, but I think state preemption of local authority was a big part of this year. We've been seeing it feel like it ramps up. There has been some debate as to whether last year or this year are worse. But we definitely see as we look at some of the bills where there's constant chipping away at our authority. I have on here another theme is no is not an answer. One of the things that I think we've struggled with is that there are very few bills that I feel like not only just Midvale, but cities as a whole have the ability to say, that's a bad idea. And what we end up doing most of the time is negotiating on horrible bills, and our hope is that some of them just become bad bills. Clearly we would like it to be better, but that's oftentimes what our hope is. The regular sort of there's a regular tactic that we saw up there, which was sort of a legislator saying, this is my goal, you, cities, write it, and if you don't meet my goals, the bill you'll end up with is going to be way worse. And we see that sort of strategy happen all the time, so we're sort of acting from this, we must come up with something, or we're going to have something that's horrible. And so, anyways, no is not an answer is pretty regular up there. I think a lot of that also has to do with, I'm sure you've heard me say this stat and other people say it as well, is that from when I started in city government back in the early 2000s, there was something like 60% of the legislators up there had previously been city council members or mayors, and now that number's down to around 10%. And so I think that has really affected their ability to sort of see a lot of issues from our perspectives. In addition to that, a lot of the bills that we're going to be talking about is really coming from this perspective of residential development at any cost, as long as that cost goes to the cities. I mean, again, we've talked about this before, but there is, whatever you want to say the reason is for them to be as interested in housing as they are, a lot of these bills, even when it doesn't seem like it's about housing, it's about housing. So we'll talk about a couple of bills coming up that are specifically making sure that we make some changes to our moderate income housing plan, that we make new fixed rail station master plans or stationary plans, that kind of stuff. But even the bill that has to do about incentives to retail is still about housing, because there's a view that we're doing all of these things to bring in sales tax at the expense of building housing. And so that limitation there also has to do with housing. So a lot of this has to do with the residential development. And then the final thing is that it's the growing iceberg of bureaucracy, just reports. As we go through and talk about these bills, there's the services that we provide to the citizens that they see, the repairing of streets and all that kind of stuff. But there's this growing portion that really doesn't seem to benefit anyone that the state is requiring us to do. And again, that is, if it's not a new report, it's expanding the reports that we're currently doing for them. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. As we looked at the bills that were approved, again, this is the one that I know we've talked the most about. HB 440, sponsored by Representative Elison, adds $5 million into the state mitigation fund, bringing the total fund amount up to $10.7 million. We, through a formula, receive a portion of that, and we look at, it's going to be around $700,000 in additional funding annually that this will provide. As Kyle talked about recently in budget discussions, that number doesn't necessarily have a way to grow. And so while that's going to be great in this next year, as costs go up, we're going to continue to have to go and work with them in order to add more funds, whichever way that ends up happening, into that account, so that we don't get back into the scenario where it just chips away at our general fund to fund those mitigation costs. In addition to that, it included, unbeknownst to us until the last 8 days of the session, winter overflow plan requirement. This requires the COM to come up with a plan by September 1 in order to provide winter overflow, a solution for winter overflow housing for those experiencing homelessness. If we're unable to do that, there is a built-in fail-safe that includes the existing shelters flexing their capacity in order to handle more residents or more people seeking their services. Midvale is exempt from that. There is also a limited preemption where there are, within certain criteria, the ability for the state to identify certain, like hotels, to be shelters. Midvale, one of the things that is good is that there is a 1 mile radius from an existing shelter prohibition for those winter overflow shelters. And a lot of the facilities that they've tried to use for that in the past fall within that 1 mile, so there was some benefit from that. And then in addition to that, the state facility that we're most concerned about also falls within that radius. But the bill does say that they can use state facilities for winter overflow. We are not exempt from this, but a lot of the criteria, I think, makes it pretty hard for it to end up in Midvale. We've heard some unofficial assurances that they wouldn't put one in Midvale, but I will believe that after every year when it doesn't happen. And then the final thing related to what I was just talking about is that currently this sort of looks at the shelter relocating annually, and if you are a community that gets it, you would not have to have a overflow shelter again for 4 years. Any questions on that, Bill? Okay. The next one I want to talk about, this one is a monster, and I won't get into the details too deep, but is HB 462. This is from Representative Waldrop. Essentially, it updates, if you will recall, back in 2020, SB 34 required us to approve a moderate income housing plan. That plan included a list of menu items that we could enact in our city through that plan in order to meet the requirements of that bill. And the penalty for not doing it was we wouldn't have certain access to certain funds, TIF and TTIF, transportation funding. That plan basically said that we had to come up with 6 of these menu items and just say in our housing plan that we would do them, but there was not any sort of further requirement really that we would implement them or anything like that. And that led to some of the changes that happened this year, which is now they're putting more pressure on us to actually commit to implementing the items that we have in our housing plan. This will probably require us to go back through and re-examine that list of items. They've also included some more menu items that we can look at implementing in our community. But the bottom line is that with the new reporting that they're going to require from us and the reviewing of the housing plan that they're going to do in a different way, if we don't include items in that list and then make a meaningful effort to try to implement them, then we will once again have 2 things happen. One, potentially losing access to TTIF if we didn't do it. And then the other is that it could affect our ability to access ARPA funding also as they sort of evaluate our ability to implement that housing plan. So something that we'll be working on in the next year. And again, this comes back to that whole thing where I talk about the new reporting requirements. Now they want us to, before it was a lot more just sort of saying, here are the tools that we say we're going to use, and then what are our current housing numbers. Now they want us to do more analysis as to whether or not those tools were effective. They want us to talk about why there were obstacles to building new housing in our community, and then also getting into some of those same permit issues and numbers and that kind of stuff. They also, towards the end, threw in this, this portion at the bottom that talks about the station area plans. Bottom line is that they're saying that you have to do station area plans around all your fixed rail assets. Those station area plans have to have a radius of a ½ mile from the station. The station area plans need to show how you will increase the availability of affordable housing, promote sustainable environmental conditions, enhance access to opportunities. I don't know exactly what that means, and we'll need to work on that just a little bit, but, and then increase transportation choices and connections. What they're saying as far as the timeline is that, of course, they want us to get it done as soon as possible, but our timelines kick in when we receive land, what do they call it? Certified land, shoot, it's not just land use applications. I apologize. There's another word that goes attached to that, but so basically what that means is that if someone comes in and says, I want to request a zoning change for my property that is located within that ½ mile of the transit station, then that starts a clock where we then have to work on putting together that plan. There's a bunch of different sort of, like, if someone comes in with that application now, then that means we will have until July 2023 to get that completed. After that, it sort of starts a one-year clock if anyone is to submit one of those applications.
We have that now, don't we?
We have,
There's that one property just on the north side of Center that's terrible.
right.
So would our clock start now? I mean, they went to planning and zoning. They've never come to us. Is it too late? Do they have to start again?
We are, I think that one would push us towards having to do the plan. We're just double checking a little bit on the timing of it because the bill talks about if there is anything that comes in like now towards the end, and we want to make sure that they really mean sort of when the bill was approved versus something that has come in the last 6 months. That would be an example of that, but we're just going to double check to see if we actually have to start that clock. This portion of the bill was it was one of the last things to get negotiated, and then it was the transit station portion of this was developed somewhere else and then sort of slammed into this bill, and so there are some rough portions of it, like what exactly enhancing access to opportunities are and that kind of stuff. So we're working through some of it, but I do anticipate that we will be triggered at some point in the near term, and we'll have to move forward with at least one of these plans. There is some provision in there that will allow us to not necessarily have to proceed if there's, for example, not a lot of development opportunities around there. So, for example, no one is probably going to submit a rezone request around the station that's over by Overstock. So at least we're, and then even then, if there was some reason to move forward or something is pushing us to do that, we can say that there's not a whole lot of development potential around there because it is developed, and I think we could not have to do that one. But I do think that there is a potential that we could have to move forward with the one that's on Center or on 7200 South. We're going to continue to look into that, and we'll provide you with more information on that. This is my least favorite one, just so you guys know. We talked about this a little bit. I know this wasn't one of your highest priorities, but this was that example of a bill that's about housing but not about housing. This is the one that prohibits cities from providing incentives to retail businesses. It includes a lot of exceptions, including if a census tract has area median income below 70% of the area median income. If there's mixed-use development that includes a certain amount of housing, you can provide an incentive. If you're dealing with retail facilities under 20,000 square feet, if you're putting in infrastructure, parking, public parking, or doing something with main streets, those are also some of the exceptions that are in there. It does require some new reporting so that if you do provide incentives to retail businesses, that you'd have to report that to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. And then if you don't get that done and someone identifies that you're not properly reporting, then they would refer us to the state auditor to look into it further. I'll go through these other ones just a little bit quicker. HB 2 just gets into a lot more reporting regarding justice courts. This is all, I think, just setting up for a bigger change to justice courts in the future. HB 23 requires all public safety entities to provide mental health services for first responders, their families, and retirees. There's going to be required some significant rulemaking around that. But in talking with UPD, we don't think that that's going to be something that's going to have a huge cost to us, but we're continuing to work on that. Representative Gwynn approved HB 70, which requires employing agency of a Tier 2 public safety officer that is injured on duty to pay the state retirement fund on the employee's behalf while they are on long-term disability, and this just sort of aligns Tier 2 and Tier 1 retirement requirements. HB 399, this adds Garrity statements to the list of protected records if properly classified. The Garrity statements are essentially, if we are doing and Lisa can correct me if I say this wrong, but this was a big deal up there, and there was a lot of time that was spent leading up to the session and during this. Essentially what it is that if there is, for example, an incident involving police officers, and the agency wants to do a review of what happened in that incident, it can create, Lisa looks like she's gonna correct me. Nope. Okay. It creates a situation where not everything that is said during that review would then become a public record that could be grandma'd. This is intended to make it so that we can actually have thorough and meaningful reviews of incidents without people feeling like they are going to get critically reviewed in a way that isn't going to be good for the agency or the officer that's responding. Is there something else I should say on that? Did I get that about right?
Well, one thing is that it's all public employees. It specifically, Garrity comes into context with a lot of law enforcement statements, but it is all public employees,
Sorry.
teachers.
A lot of the discussion up there is always about it from the law
That's
enforcement
what
perspective.
the press is always after about.
There's a much more, Lisa went into a much more detailed explanation having to do with your Fifth Amendment rights and some other stuff like that. I won't go into that for you, because then Lisa would just have to correct that too. The SB 115 preempts cities from enacting firearms regulations for public facilities. I'm not actually sure how much of this is actually a new authority. We had been concerned that this could impact homeless shelters, but given ours is privately run, they still have the ability as private operators to say that there are no guns allowed in the shelter, so we're happy about that. SB 140 expands housing transit reinvestment zones, HTRZs, to allow for them to be used around more stations. Last year it was approved, I think it was 3. They've expanded it up to 8. An HTRZ is essentially just another form of a redevelopment agency or CRA. The difference here is that it allows for a different group of people, including those from the state, to approve the project area, and that way it can kind of streamline and move forward. Again, in some ways, this is really all about housing because there have been, for example, some school districts in other parts of the state that just basically say they will not do new CRA project areas, and this is sort of, and especially if it includes housing, and this is a way of making sure that around transit, where the state believes that more housing is needed, this is a way of helping to provide the resources to do that. It also modifies the membership of the approving body. And then of the approved bills, the last one I was just going to cover is SB 190. Recently, I can't remember which year it was, but the Medical Cannabis Act was approved. This provides some definitions and provides a carve-out as it pertains to first responders. It basically says that law enforcement essentially can't use medical cannabis because of how it relates to the federal requirements over law enforcement. And then as it pertains to more like EMTs, that's another term, I'm forgetting exactly how they refer to that, but essentially that says that you can't use cannabis within 12 hours of your shift. There's just some things like that that are involved with this bill. Heidi, you look like you might have had a question.
Chief was just really upset when you were talking about that.
He was
almost
pounding
knocked
his fist
desk
up
over.
there.
Yeah, he was mad. So.
I was like, why are you throwing out that candy? And he's like, it's not the gummy bears you think. That is not true. None of that is true.
Off the record.
None of that is true.
Please make sure that's in the minutes.
Yeah, not true. Let's be clear. Josh, write that somewhere. Okay.
Edit that part out.
Now, sometimes the bills that failed are just as important as the bills that passed because it gives you an idea of some of the stuff that we know will be coming up. As we recall, there was several bills having to do with retirement for law enforcement. HB 12 would have allowed public safety personnel to be rehired after 90 days. There was some concerns about the cost on this. what I've heard is that this will be something that will be covered during the interim, and we expect that there will be some form of bill probably in the next session. In addition to that, there was an attempt to limit cities' ability to use eminent domain for the purposes of creating open space or parks. That bill died, but every year there's an interest in trying to eliminate or reduce the ability for cities to use eminent domain. And so that will continue to happen. HB 95 would have prohibited municipal governments from requiring a property owner to plant or maintain lawn or turf. This just comes back to the issues of water conservation, and I think we'll see some version of a bill like this in the future. There were several other bills that do affect water usage in some way, including the secondary water bill that was approved that doesn't necessarily affect us, but it's all part of this trying to find ways to address water usage. Both Representative Moss and Representative Benyon ran or attempted to run bills that would have provided more powers to the city in the regulation of short-term rentals. Neither of those bills clearly passed, since this is on the failed bills page. But I have heard through some of our partners up on the Hill that there's starting to be a little bit more interest in trying to look at the city's powers to regulate short-term rentals. A couple of years ago, that was just a non-starter, but we think that there might be some openings in the near term, and that's definitely something that we and other communities will try to get involved in order to push that forward. SB 55 was the one that we talked about, where it would have prevented Justice Courts from collecting fines on citations issued by the Utah Highway Patrol. If that had been approved, it could have affected us to the tune of $100,000. And so we pushed really hard on that one not getting approved. In some ways, this bill was never about us. In some ways, it had to do with concerns about how Salt Lake City was recruiting Utah Highway Patrol. Did I say Salt Lake City? I said Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City was hiring Utah Highway Patrol officers, and there was some hurt feelings about that, and this was kind of intended to get them. So that is an update on some of the bills that I thought were important. There were well over 1,000 bills up on the Hill. The league tracked several hundred, and these were just some that we thought you might be interested in and have some impact on us. Does anyone have any questions about any of those bills, any other bills, or anything we could research if I didn't cover it?
I have like 400 hours worth of questions or comments that I'll just not say right now.
I do have one that I've haven't looked into, and that is was potentially going to affect our ordinance on puppy mill.
Oh, yeah.
That one did not get passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It failed miserably, I'm happy to report.
Thank you for reminding me on that one. Great, thank you, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Is there a second?
Second. Can we take? Yes. Could we take a 5-minute break, Mayor?
Yes. We're adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break. And the redevelopment agency of Midvale City is in order. Welcome, everyone. Rory, will you call the roll?
Yes, Board Member Brown.
Here.
Robinson. Here. Glover.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
And Sperry.
Here.
Thank you, Rory. All right, this portion of the agenda is for public comments. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for a public hearing on the agenda may address the redevelopment agency of Midvale City at this point by stepping to the microphone and stating your name. Seeing none in person, Rory, are there any online public comments?
No, there's not. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, for the consent agenda, we've got 2 items. Consider minutes of March 15th, 2022. And the second item is set date and time, April 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. for a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2022 budget for the Bingham Junction, Jordan Bluffs, Main Street, and citywide housing RDA funds. Cody, did you need to speak to that at all? Okay. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Board Member Gettle.
Yes.
Glover.
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. And Brown.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to our discussion item, we've just got one tonight. Item A, discussion of the proposed Main Street Food Truck Plaza concept at the City Hall, North Lawn, and South Plaza space. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Board. I'm really excited to bring this one to you. I've been, when I start talking about it 6 months in advance about how excited I am, then you know that I barely can contain myself on this. But I am
mean,
really
your demeanor right now is very, it's very contagious right now. I feel the excitement.
He had quite the swagger when he walked up to the mic.
I don't have a way to elevate my excitement level. I'm sorry.
I'm listening, Nate.
All right, so what this is the RDA staff has been looking at ways to continue to activate Main Street, as we know. It's an interesting project with a lot of infill development, a lot of exciting things that are happening with Main Street, obviously the adoption of the CRA. But in looking at different elements of Main Street, I always like to look at how the city can participate more than just do those normal things like infrastructure and parking and things, which are hugely important, but not always the most exciting things, and not always I always like to talk about these sparks that happen, that make things happen, water infrastructure isn't necessarily a spark that makes things happen. So what this is, as you would see, as you've seen in your packet, is a proposal to turn the North Lawn and then also the plaza space that's already existing in between City Hall and the community center, or the senior center, into a very activated space. And so what we're proposing here is building a plaza, but building a plaza that's very specifically focused around food trucks and bringing in food trucks not only as an event, but to support any events that we have on Main Street, to bring a food to Main Street, which it's really lacking now, and to really activate this north end of Main Street and act as a spark. There's a lot of developers who own parcels along on the north part of Main Street who are really waiting for things to kind of take off, and we want to do everything we can to help activate that and make the north end a vibrant end of the Main Street. This is the most bullet points you're ever going to see me put on one slide ever, because I know I'm breaking every rule that I have. And I could seriously put 3 times as many of these things on here, and I won't talk about. But like I said, it brings much needed activation to the north end of Main Street. It's an ongoing event style activation, and what I mean by that is something like, when you talk about a farmer's market or something that happens every week, or that happens even more often than that, where it's something that can be activated and constantly bringing people to the street. Extremely highly visible location when you think about all the traffic that comes up Holden and even all the traffic that comes up Main Street. Everyone that drives it is going to know that this is here and hopefully want to go and see what's going on there. It becomes a local draw and a regional draw. I think local residents love these, and people actually go around the valley and find where these different food trucks are. A lot of food trucks have followings that people will go to. Like I said, it really fits in nice when you think about activating it on like a Friday or a Saturday, where it's the City Hall and the Senior Center are really not used during those times. And so you're using those parking spaces, you're using this plaza space in a way that you're not going to use on a weekend typically. Every time that we have any event on Main Street, this could be activated. Every time any of the businesses like the theaters have shows, this can be activated. And one of the things we've heard from them is they have so many people that come to see the shows at the theaters, and then when they leave, there's just nowhere for them to walk to and go and eat. And this can potentially solve that problem. Variety of food, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. This really acts as the way that it wants to be, that I'll show you the designs, but the way that we design this really is a higher level of design that acts as a north entryway to Main Street. So it acts as that north gateway. Later on, not today, but later on, we'll talk about what that south gateway is, but we really want to bring people into Main Street on both sides, on Center and off of Holden. All along Main Street, there's different places, and you see this in any Main Street or any business corridor that you have, whether it's a small Main Street like we have or it's the Las Vegas Strip, is you see these places where there's these dead areas where when you're walking, it just all of a sudden, there's nothing there. And what people tend to do when they do that, when they see that, is they turn around. And that's not what we want them to do. We have a very short Main Street, and we want to activate the full length of it. So having something that goes out to the very tip on the north end really does that in a kind of an incredible way. Again, I'll show this in the pictures, but it does connect down to Bingham Junction. There is some safety improvements, which we'll do with this, to the Holden sidewalk and to the intersection that's there. So we'll make this work safely. And there is some design elements that we're putting in there to do that. And really to a large extent, wanting to slow Main Street down, because I think, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I noticed that people use Main Street as a cutoff street and they just travel way too fast on Main Street. It's not what we necessarily want the Main Street to have that feel.
I think another, just to keep on that thought process, until we can figure out the lights on the south end, people will always do that. Because longtime residents, like my wife, if that turns red, they're gonna turn right. Because they know they have to wait for northbound to have a left-hand turn and then southbound to have a left-hand turn.
Yeah.
Which even, like tonight, that'll happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think
it's
that's
fine.
a bigger problem.
I think it's fine for people to still drive down Main Street. I think we just need to slow them down when they're doing it so that they don't feel comfortable driving that fast. So it's like, if you want to do that and it's still worth it for you to skip all those right turns and skip those lights, that's fine, but you're going to drive slower down there. So we'll continue to work on that as we design the full length of Main Street and look at ways to combat that with bulb outs and all sorts of different things. But I have seen things where people have been going the speed limit and people get mad and they pass them. To have that happening on a Main Street with all the crosswalks is just not acceptable in any way. Like I said, this really helps jumpstart the north end of Main Street. It shows that the city is willing to put in some significant investment here and really work to activate the street. And it's a perfect amenity when you're talking about a Main Street arts, food, and culture district. And yes, I've keep adding food in there, and I'm going to keep doing that. We're not just building an arts and culture district, we're building an arts, food, and culture district, because we want all three of those things. They're all important. When I read off the screen, then I can't actually see the bottom. This is why I should never do these things that long. So, two other things that we're doing is we're actually doing, we're doing a Main Street market strategy, so marketing strategy, so kind of figuring out how do you market Main Street? Is it named the right thing? I think Midvale Main Street probably is the right name, but is there something more that goes with that? So we're working with a marketing firm that we're just going to start with to kind of work on that. That'll be integrated into this process. And then also we've received a grant from WFRC to do Main Street streetscape and lighting plan, and so that'll be a full design of what the streetscape should look like, not necessarily designing the streetscape, but almost designing like a guide for every business owner when they go to remodel or want to add street side dining, what that looks like, what those design standards look like, so that we have some continuity between the street. We don't want it to all look the same, but we want it to kind of fit with itself to an extent. And then also the lighting, and we're not talking about street lights there, we're talking about festival lighting, things that go across the street, things that draw people up and down the street, and that we activate during events and just, basically every night that we want people to be coming to Main Street. All right, so I read through all those lists. So let me go through the design here a little bit. Again, this is what we're doing here is on the north end of the plaza. I don't know if I point you, I'll have to turn around. But the north, what I'm calling the north lawn would be the food truck plaza here. This is really activated in a way where when you're coming up Holden, and it's kind of designed to draw you into the main. It also here in this plaza, but you feel separated off towards Main Street, which is where we want this to be. Sort of purpose here. In the sidewalk, which we've been working with UTA to extend this sidewalk to this extent or not, will landscaping form-based code, but we do want so that this feels like a way up here into here. Intersection we as possible. Be putting a little bit makes it so as people now, which is what they do, actually want and make more when people are coming here. Sign here, which we'd that would be there, so that would be controlling that. Because of this, the shortness of this street here, this would always have the right of way coming in here, just because you never want anything to back up into Holden. In here, but also street, providing seating all the way along here and activating this plaza over here so that you're activating the full site here. And when you have developments that are planned to go in here and to go in here and to go in here, this is going to be completely activated with all of those developments, which are these 3-story mixed-use developments that follow the form-based code. So really love the idea of doing that. And then in addition to that, I'm going to talk with Keith about this. I haven't had a chance to, but I would like to include landscaping potentially in some of these islands. What those would just be these planter boxes with trees in them, so they wouldn't hurt visibility, but also the same as wanting to slow Main Street down, really want to slow Holden down as we develop the Main Street and the whole downtown area out. Holden needs to slow down a little bit. People that are trying to, get off the freeway and get over to West Jordan really can continue down to Bingham Junction and use that to cut over, but this becomes more of a boulevard feeling street. Just another close-up version of this, but a nice way to activate a city hall building and it really enliven this area. Some of the concept drawings, again, these are just concept drawings. You've seen these. I put all of these in the packet. Acts is a very nice plaza space on its own, but as you know, if you just build plazas, they end up not being used, and so that's really why the food truck concept here is what makes this plaza work. But even still, with the Arts District, I think I even put it in the summary report that this could serve as a great place in the future to do a sculpture garden, things like that. I think it could be a very nice space for art as well as food trucks. Here it is with the food trucks. The way that it's designed to have up to 7 food trucks in there. And then in addition to that, you could have additional food trucks that actually park on Main Street in between the two plazas. So you could have up to 12, 14 food trucks if you wanted to really have a food event. If anybody's gone to like Portland and see these food pod areas, we're not going to quite do that, but because they stay there permanently. But this, when you start talking about that amount of food trucks for a food truck event, it becomes a big draw to the Main Street. So just some renderings, you've seen these. We really want to make it active at night, so want to have a very robust lighting scheme, probably even more robust than what the landscape architect put in here. I have some concepts of what I want them to potentially do that I think can have a little bit more of an iconic feel, because I'm trying to create these iconic moments on Main Street and things that people identify with, and a lighting scheme that goes with this plaza can really do that. And really, when you're there eating at the food trucks with your family, with your friends, it becomes an experience. And the lighting is a way that you can do that. You can really make it an experience on its own. A great opportunity for art on the other side of the street, as you see that's just a rendering, but commissioning some public art to go out there is a great way to activate that area and to signify that you are an arts district, and this is the beginning of that district. But just on this one here, I just wanted to highlight this along the side of Main Street, really building these little areas that bulb into it so that this isn't just you're walking from one plaza to the other, but you could actually just get your food truck food and you could stop there, so it's active all the way along it. And like I said, when additional food trucks come, you could actually line them up along here and just have a full array of food. Activating this plaza, which I've seen one person sitting in there before. But putting tables and things in there, I think an important element of this is bringing in these raised planter boxes, because they just add additional places for people to sit. So we just want it to be more inviting, more places to sit, and really activate that space. Also, replacing the trees that are in there with shade trees, because we want this to be a nice place in the summer. And so putting in some more robust shade trees instead of the very linear trees that we have now, which don't really shade a whole lot. Some night shots. You could imagine this at night, how inviting it would be. So I am going to No, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do here. I'm going to, so when we talk about, that's the design, we'll have a discussion at the end. This is included in here. One of the scary things for me was that at the beginning of this, we were kind of doing the, if you build it, they'll come theory. If we build a food truck plaza, food trucks will start showing up. It's not really what we wanted to do. And so Kate was able to reach out to the Food Truck League, and we've met with them. And Elliot from the Food Truck League is here. And so I was going to introduce you to him. He could tell you a little bit about the Food Truck League and tell you about the partnership that we would like to create to activate the space. So, you want to jump up?
And just please state your name for the record.
Yep. So my name is Elliot Steinley. I'm general manager for the Food Truck League here in Utah. I'm also very excited about this. I'm going to elevate my voice and change my volume a little bit so that you guys know how excited I am. So I can really address that. So the Food Truck League, have any of you heard of us before? Yeah, okay. So probably the most common thing that people know us from is the roundups that we set up. We work with Daybreak, Sandy, Draper, West Jordan. We work with a few cities setting up roundups in their public parks. Typically, we partner with the city and work out a night that works best for them and the community. And we say we'll provide, 6 to 15 food trucks on a weekly basis for the summer, making sure that it's sustainable for the trucks. Obviously, if no one comes out, the trucks are losing money. We have to work with them on that. That's just one part of what we do. We also provide food trucks as a service for like office parks and office buildings for lunchtime. Usually 11 to 2, we'll work out a schedule, put a food truck there once a week, maybe 5 times a week at most if they're really popular and the food trucks are doing really well. And then we also do catering. So if you reached out and said, hey, I've got a wedding or a corporate event, I need a food truck there. There are 100 of them. I don't know which one to pick. We work with them, with people to help with that as well. So our whole business model is based on outward mindset. How can we provide value for the people in the food truck industry? So cities, food trucks, customers, anyone involved, we want to be able to build that industry and help Utah have a thriving food truck scene, essentially. We're no Portland. We don't have the pods that are permanent, and they have 500 food trucks there. But we're trying to do our best here. The partnership that he's recommending is, or at least bringing up, is the idea that we would partner together on the space, bring in food trucks starting with a weekly basis, and making sure that we're sustainable every step of the way. We fluctuate the number of food trucks based on how popular a location is. Daybreak, I think before they started building on North Shore, we were up to like 15 to 20 food trucks a week just because so many people came out. On the smaller scale, we might have 6 or 7 food trucks. We typically can't go below 4 or 5 too often, because if you have maybe a couple cancellations or something happen, you only have 3 or 4 options. You want to be able to bring your family and everybody gets something different. So there are some boundaries on the lower side of that as well. We're working with Nate to kind of bring in kind of an early testing. We want to bring in food trucks to the parking lot this summer just to get a feel for what the market is and how much marketing would be needed to bring people and activate the space. Without a plaza or anything, just a bare parking lot, how many people can food trucks bring? And so we're working together on that. I think we're starting in May, hoping to start in May. So we'll have food trucks here every Friday night, assuming it's sustainable for the trucks. Questions?
Is there other cities that have done something like this?
Yes, great question. So Bountiful Town Square, they just finished that in the last couple of years. They planned it for food trucks. The spacing, food trucks are bigger than anyone expects. So the spacing is always an issue, but we have that on Friday nights as well. It's one of our most popular spots. It's right off of Main Street in Bountiful. That was a popular spot before they built the square as well. We had it at the City Hall and we moved it to the new town square. Cedar Hills is another one. They built it into their Harvey Park. That one is on the flip side. They built it. We have the trucks there. We're still struggling to get it marketed enough to get people there. But it's such a nice space for the trucks that from our side, we're extra committed to bring trucks in to activate that space.
When you say marketing, what do you do, or what do we do?
So like putting a blip on the city marquee that's out there, city newsletters, calendar are usually the biggest ask that we have when we partner with the city. If you guys have any flyers that are going out, it's nice to have a little blurb about the roundup or anything like that. From our side, a lot of times we'll put up banners at busy intersections. That one's been particularly popular. We focused on social media marketing at first, and we put up one 8x3 banner, and it blew all of our social media marketing away. We're like, oh, so physical marketing and then social media marketing as well. We have something around 50,000 followers on Facebook and Instagram that we leverage that. And then a website, we have every city that we partner with, we put onto our website. The link is ftl-trucks.com. If you guys want to check those out, we have a few cities that are operating already. And it's usually just the weekly lineup. If a truck cancels or is replaced, we update that within 5 or 10 minutes, so you can always see what trucks are going to be there.
There's this Peruvian food truck that I ate at one time
Red
that has
food
twice.
truck?
Say what?
Red food truck?
Do they have the twice cooked potato?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right,
Yeah.
I just want to know which one that was.
They're like the top Peruvian truck out there.
All right.
If anyone is
How
like,
do we
oh,
get that one
Peruvian.
here? And then the other is for these when you bring the trucks out, do you see that it's oftentimes bringing in people from a large radius into that? Is it usually the specific neighborhood that it's in that is the primary people that are utilizing that food truck? So that's question one. And then the other is there, I think Nate has done a great job of looking at how to design the space, and from the physical side of things, I can't imagine how it could be any better. But are there things like music or other kinds of entertainment that are needed in order to make these kinds of things successful? Or just with sort of the physical plant and great food trucks, that's all that's really needed in order to be successful in these situations?
Cool. I'll answer those in order. So who comes? We typically market to the radius up until the next, we call them league nights, but roundup over. So in this city, it would be like from Sandy to, I think,
Is Murray?
what's on the other side? Murray. Yeah, from Sandy to Murray would be what we would market as far as our social media marketing. After that, it depends. If there's a truck that has a big following, Red Food Truck or Jamaica's Kitchen or Cluck Truck, they'll have people come from Tremonton to come down and get food from them. So that could have a pretty wide range depending on the truck. But typically, if it's farther out than 5 or 10 minutes, then there's something that they want to eat closer that they want, unless it's a particularly nice location. Daybreak, we were right along the lake, and there was like natural seating built in. It was really nice, and so we had a big following, a big showing up from both the local neighborhood and the people that were farther out. So yeah, it depends, but typically food trucks will bring anyone from the county because they go all over. And then if it's within 5-10 minutes driving, then that's usually what we see locally. And then question number 2, entertainment-wise, this one, entertainment is always a plus. We view these roundups as a platform for the city. North Salt Lake has Chief Night, where the police and fire chief come out. The new mayor of Sandy City has been really focused on bringing more things out, so they have a car show one night. We work with the Children's Entrepreneur Market. They want to bring out the market out here this summer to help show off some of the kid entrepreneurs that they have. And they partner with us for a few locations. From our side, the more the merrier. Like, we'd rather have focused on community, what artists you guys can bring in. We know a guy that used to play at Peterson Family Farms. He used to just show up and play every Friday night with the ukulele, and we said, that's awesome. He played for us at Sandy last night because he just had power, and we're okay with it. So it's always a plus, but food trucks by themselves in an empty parking lot, depending on how much of a food desert it is, people will still come out. Eagle Mountain, we were just in Ridley's parking lot, and crazy amounts of people came out because there are like 6 restaurants in Eagle Mountain. And they were like, oh man, this doubled our selection for the night. So yeah, so entertainment is always a plus, but not necessary. Any other questions?
Is there I know it varies by truck, But is there like an average number of people that need to show up per truck to make it worthwhile? Is there any kind of metrics on that?
Typically 50 to 100 meals is what they're looking for. Lunches are a bit lower, just because there's not as much competition with like weddings and other catering events. That number has been going up since COVID. One, because of costs, and then two, they just seem more in vogue than anything else. Like last year, we were just blown off our feet by how much demand there was for food trucks. And so if they're choosing between a $2,000 catering and going to a roundup, they want something to match that. But on the flip side, a lot of trucks see the roundups as an opportunity for marketing their truck. You'll have maybe 50 to 100 people for that truck, but also 6 other trucks. You might have 600 people there that night, and they're all seeing each truck. And so they do get quite a few cater requests from going to roundup, so they're kind of committed to both sides. So that offsets the cost or the opportunity cost of going to a roundup.
So if there's 5 trucks, we need to get 500 meals.
Right. Ideally, yeah, over the course of the night. So there might be 75 people there at any one time. And people come and grab food and bring it to their car and bring it home, depending on the weather, that kind of thing.
I commit to buy 5 meals from the red food truck.
If I'd known as a favorite, I would have shown up with some. They're awesome. Any other favorite food trucks? If there's, questions?
I literally have not been to a food truck that I haven't liked yet, and I'm very proud of my 100% pro food truck voting record.
I made a dedicated effort. To try food trucks. I put on probably 20 pounds when I started for the league. And I had one bad meal, and it was a garlic aioli on a really hot day on a hot dog. And I was like, it's like eating lard. And then since then, I've been back to the same truck, and it was delicious. It's just a bad choice on my part. So
Fine,
yeah,
I'll say one.
Beans?
Is it Art City Donut? That one.
Yeah.
That would be, I feel like that has a huge draw.
Yeah, they are hard to get. We work with them I think we schedule them for maybe 4 of our locations this year. And every other time they're doing caterings. So they're hard to get, but I'll write them down.
Yeah, every time they were at the U, it was a line worth waiting for.
We got them to come to Sandy this year. I think we have them there once or twice a week in Sandy.
I might have journeyed more than 10 minutes.
To go there.
Go there.
There are some
That's how
trucks
I'm
that are
gonna
worth
send
it.
that. Yeah.
I had a friend visiting from Arizona yesterday, and we went and drove to the red food truck because he loves Peruvian food, and he was like, I gotta get that. Was it Lobo Saltado? It's like, I gotta get that Lobo Saltado. It was really funny.
I once drove to Eden for a food truck gathering, so that was fun.
Was that recent?
That was a few years ago. It was part of the Hot Air Balloon Festival they do there, and I think it was one of those things where people weren't used to so many food options, so every line, like I think I waited an hour for this one food truck.
And it's hard to get trucks out there
Yeah.
too, so yeah.
I don't know if they have their truck anymore, but my Puerto Rican wife would be upset with me if I didn't mention Papito Mo's.
They are awesome. They have gone more the way of the restaurant recently because of staffing.
And I know that they changed restaurants. I don't know if they went back to food truck or not, but.
They dropped it in the winter. We're hoping they come back in the summer. But yeah, staffing has been really hard for trucks. So they'll have 3 trucks, and 2 of them be sitting in their parking lot, and they'll only be able to operate 1 because they can't clone themselves and put themselves on trucks. But they are awesome. We like
Mayor,
them.
which one was that?
Papito Mo's. They have a restaurant in Salt Lake.
Puerto Rican food. It's pretty amazing.
So a lot of cities bring up like an exclusivity issue. Any truck that registers with us, we're happy to work with. Obviously, we have to maintain some kind of quality on reliability. So we keep a database on every spot we send a truck, how they do, whether they canceled or not. We keep track of all of that to make sure that if you cancel, over 15, 20%, that's 1 out of 5. Like that isn't really good for customers. They're expecting Red Food Truck to show up and they don't. So we track all that from our side, and then typically the trucks that perform better, that have more people coming out, that are bigger in social media, that are more popular, we tend to schedule them a bit more, and if they become less popular, then their ranking drops and we switch them out. Any trucks that register with us, we put them into that ranking system, we typically try and give them a little bit of a bump because they need to get a couple of locations under their belt, a couple of spots, a couple of bookings to get into it. There are maybe 5 or 10 food trucks we don't work with. Most of them had some kind of spat with the owner when we first started, and there's a little bit of bad blood, and so they just kind of gone and done their own thing. So there is that. We also charge a scheduling fee from any food truck that we schedule. It's typically like 99% of the time, 10% of sales. That funds our business and allows us to set up events, but also helps us keep a finger on the pulse on what their sales are and how a location is averaging. So that if a truck says, hey, I've never been to Midvale, it's been going a couple weeks, how's it going? Then we can provide an average of, well, trucks, both of your type have been doing around this, and then trucks overall have been doing in this range to help them with food prep. So usually when anyone gets complaints about us, it's usually they charge too much and they won't book me enough. And so just be prepared. Those might come to whoever is the contact for the city. Any other questions? I expect to be grilled. This is awesome. This is great.
Did a good job.
Thanks.
We're sad there's not a food truck right here, right now that we can
I know.
sample.
I couldn't, 9 o'clock at night, it's tough to
A
get
little
us out
rough,
of there.
yeah.
A little tough to get them out there. Yeah.
The 9 meals probably don't make up for the 100.
Hey, 5:30, we could get one over here.
There you go.
I like
Yeah, so serving times, we typically do 5 to 8:30.
That's when we have meal each night here on Tuesdays.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, serving times 5 to 8:30. Before daylight savings, if daylight savings sticks around, we usually do 5 to 7:30 because it's getting so dark so quickly. And then once daylight savings or I think the nautical twilight is what we go by. Once that is close to 8:30, then we lengthen the time so that people can come a bit later. With lighting, that's not so much of an issue, which is nice.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
So that gives you the idea on how to activate it. I have, since I've been working on this for a little bit, have talked to a lot of the developers that we've been working with on Main Street and several of the business owners just to kind of get their idea. And everyone that I've talked to has been sort of ecstatic about it. They just love the idea. Even ones that are proposing restaurants just feel like this helps make this a food destination, and it raises, all ships. And so they're fully supportive of this. Excited that the city would consider putting funding into this. From a council standpoint, just other questions from the design standpoint or from anything else from me, questions from me?
What's your ideal timeline on this being completed?
I always like to do everything faster than they could actually be done, so I'll give some timeline that is impossible to keep, but I would like to see if we could get this going construction-wise, possibly even this summer. Not that it will be open this summer, but we'll activate the parking garage, but I would love to see if we can have this open for even events that we have later in the year, like, Halloween and things like that. But if not, certainly open by next spring and next summer is the timeline that I would like to be at. It is a plaza, so it's not a building. There should be a way that we can get bids on this and build it.
Would this replace the Midvale City sign that's at that intersection of Holden and Main
Yes,
Street?
it would.
Okay, good.
That sign would no longer be in existence.
And if you need help with a sledgehammer, I will come out and help you.
So I think that sign is, it should
Historic.
go to the park or something. Like, we shouldn't sledgehammer it, because I found out today from some people when I was talking about it, when we were in that meeting, that it's like an old sign or something.
Historic Society over that way somewhere.
Yeah, so that we'd probably want to.
We won't
I don't
blow it
know
up. We won't blow it up then. do something like that.
Put it in the Bowery.
Yeah.
Well, I love the.
And then blow up the Bowery.
I love the food truck idea, but I even love more that it's a plaza too, that it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
In other words, we could use it for a number of,
You could use it for a whole bunch of things, and it makes the other plaza on the other side even more usable. It makes the whole city campus here a usable space for something other than a city hall. Even when you think about the fact that the conference room over here has those doors that open out into it, I mean, it really does make this.
I think it's a great amenity for our city employees as well. Obviously, if you can step outside and eat your lunch in a plaza with.
If there were such things as healthy food
Yeah.
trucks, that would be better. but-
Well, even bring your own meal from home and eat it if you want.
Oh, I see the plaza. I
Like
thought you
every
meant the
day,
food.
every
Right.
Monday through Thursday, you guys can eat out there if you choose.
and at Christmas time, you could have a huge Christmas tree there, and there's lots
Yeah.
of things you could do. I like the idea a lot.
I'm a big fan, but I've always sort of preached what I don't want to say unusable grass, but like grass that no one's going to, do anything on. Both of those areas are sort of that, right? So if you have these seating areas here and then farther north, right? Because it does have that. I'm not going to comment on the aesthetics of the sign, the Midvale sign. You just like no one's walking over there, right? So it's just something the city has to mow and water and not use. So I would like us to think about that for lots of places, right? Long term. You said that there could be some connection points to Bingham Junction. Is that right?
Yeah, so let me jump back here. So what this actually started off with was that we've always wanted to connect the sidewalk, which ends right under that's the rail spur there, that ends right there on the other side there. We've always wanted to connect this sidewalk up to this point, which we've had plans, and Keith has been working on this for a while. But as I was looking at it, it just seemed like a way to activate this. So this would be the connection that goes to Bingham Junction. Obviously, we improved this connection. This is very preliminary, but we have been having very good traction with the crossing. I don't have a map that I could show it, but over here that goes to the
Like to Tuscany?
Tuscany. We've finally found the right contact on who manages the spur, and of course, they have really good contacts with Utah Rail. And so we've met with them on how to redesign that and how to do a crossing there, and have gotten really positive response. Now, obviously, that's hugely expensive, but we did apply for a grant with UDOT, and UDOT in their regional groups have approved that grant. So between that grant, being able to work with the rail companies and Savage, who manages the rail spur, there's really, really positive momentum to get that rail crossing to come, or to get that Tuscany to come through to Holden. The design that we've proposed also has a light right there at the end of that, so that would create a natural crossing to come to the senior center and City Hall, and hopefully eliminate this what I think is a very dangerous crossing right there, and bring it into a crossing here that's still just as accessible as that, but actually more, because it ties into the actual neighborhood that's back there. It gives a much quicker access to the track station. And of course, it has a light, so it does things like slowing down Holden, and it creates a safe crossing, and it just opens up the main street to that divide that we kind of naturally have there. So that's in the works. That's a few years out, but we'll know in the next month if UDOT goes with their regional recommendation, which we think they will, and fund that. So that's, that funding is in the tune of $3.5 million. So significant funding going towards that, which the city and the RDA on its own could do, but it would be much harder than having UDOT behind it.
And my only recommendation or thought on that is if you have the contacts or whatever, like, just stay on them. Like,
Yeah,
I think
no.
it would be huge for the city to connect, to make something like this food truck work if the people in the townhomes can just walk across the street. Because right now, they're probably gonna drive,
Yeah, they would have to.
right? Because
yeah,
it's,
walk quite
it's
a
pretty
ways.
far. And I think it would be great for Main Street generally to have that. That's something I've always sort of liked the idea of. So, you know, obviously you have a million things on your plate, but if you could stay on top of that one, I think, you know, the last thing we'd want is your contact to like change jobs or something, and then you have to start all over, and because it seems political in nature to even get to that point.
Have you done any outreach to, there's like 4 homes at that very north end of Main Street who might be visually impacted by this? I mean, in a positive way.
What homes are you talking
So
about?
right at the end, the north end
Like all
of
the way
Main
out?
Street before it turns into industrial, there's like
Here, out over in here?
4, yeah, there's like a couple of homes that they're kind of hidden. I mean, unless you drive that extended Main Street, you kind of never see them. I think it might be nice to reach out to those like last 4 or 5 kind of residents, since it'll be, you know, they will be the ones most impacted by this. And again, in a positive way, I think.
Yeah,
for
I think
most.
with the trees that we're proposing in the landscaping there,
Yeah.
they're basically getting a park in their front yard as
Exactly.
opposed to Holden.
So I'd be happy to go knock on their doors and tell them the good news if you want.
Well, if council's happy with this, I think we'll move it forward, start doing some more in-depth design work, putting some budgets together. It's not, there's a lot of work involved with this, and there's a lot of trees, and there's a lot of things, so it's not the cheapest plaza in the world, but I think the bang for the buck for Main Street is huge. And again, Matt wanted me to point out that there is a huge nexus here between Main Street and it really creates a synergy and a holistic vibe and feel that Matt really wants. Right?
Does Public Works need an extra employee to maintain all this? I'm waiting.
He said yes.
He's happy to do it, but just know that there's extra resources that are needed.
But I am sitting here calculating long-term.
So anyways, we'll move forward with this if council feels good about it. And continue to let me know if there's concerns or if there's ideas that you have. And we'll incorporate those. Thanks.
Thank you, it looks
Thank
great.
you.
He's
Motion
not
to
gonna be able to
adjourn.
sleep tonight, he's so excited.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second to adjourn? One more question before you go. The sales tax from
Yes.
food trucks, do we get it if they're here, or how does that work?
It's I'm happy to answer that. Sorry, 2 more seconds. So, a little bit extra goes to where their commissary is, and then after that, it's by populace, as far as I know. So from a food truck operating in your city, there's no direct benefit other than you get the same benefit when they operate in other cities as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.